Taki Tachibana and Mitsuha Miyomizu are two people who have always felt something lacking in their lives, despite being completely fine with it. They don't know why it is they're feeling empty inside, and always seem to be searching for something. All they know is that it all began on that day. The day the stars fell. In the town of Itomori, Japan, Mitsuha wakes up one day. It is meant to be like any other morning, but something isn't quite right. Taki has woken up in her body. He can still remember the dream he just saw. Taki looks around and then looks at the body he's in. Confused, the first thing he does is feel up his new female body. Just then, Mitsuha's sister, Yotsuha, comes in to call her for breakfast and notices her acting weird. Like any odd sibling, she ignores Mitsuha and leaves, telling her to hurry for breakfast. A confused Taki goes to the mirror, only to let out a cry of horror. The next day, as Mitsuha enters the room, Yotsuha and her grandmother notice that Mitsuha has returned to normal. The family gathers around to have breakfast and watch the news. The comet Tiamat is said to be appearing soon. After its 1,200-year-long orbit, it will be passing close to Earth, and will be visible all around the world exactly 1 month from now. Mitsuha and her sister then head to their respective schools. On her way, Mitsuha meets her friends, Seachin and Tessie. As the friends make their way to their school, they tell Mitsuha that she seems great today, considering what had happened a day earlier. Naturally, Mitsuha is confused as to what they mean. Even in school, Mitsuha realizes that she was truly not herself yesterday. She finds weird notes in her notebook, and even her teacher teases her for being super confused the day before. During break time, Tessie and Seachan tell Mitsuha how she was weird and not at all like herself yesterday. However, out of all the weird things she had done, Mitsuha gets shocked at the fact that she hadn't worn her ribbon and had bad hair. If only she knew. The friends conclude that it must be the stress giving her amnesia, and so they brush off the topic and return to their daily tasks, slandering their hometown. Seachin and Mitsuha can't bear the lackluster nature of Itomori. Everything is peaceful and quiet here, which is just boring for the girls. Even their so-called cafe is a roadside park bench where they have drinks from the vending machine. Mitsuha in particular can't bear her lifestyle, being constantly embarrassed by her politician father and wanting to return home to the same stories from her grandmother. The highlight of the day ending with their traditional dance, a preparation for the upcoming festival, and making the famous kuchikami sake and braided cords, an alcohol made by chewing rice and letting it ferment. It has been a long tradition in Mitsuha's family to make this sake, a history that goes back 200 years as per her grandmother. Granny tells them about their culture and the cords and how the threads of the cords unravel time itself. This is a story that she tells them every day, which is why it makes Mitsuha ignorant of it. Mitsuha just can't bear it. Unlike her sister, she can't get excited with this modest life. She only wishes she was a hot boy in Tokyo in her next life. Little did she know her life would turn upside down soon. In the bustling, busy town of Tokyo, Taki wakes up from his sleep, but it's not quite him. For some reason, he goes to feel his chest, but finds it empty. The missing objects have been replaced by something in his pants. It feels like a weird dream, but Mitsuha has woken up in Taki's body. Taki's father asks him to finish his dinner and head to school as he goes to his work. Mitsuha still can't believe that it's a dream, but she doesn't forget to enjoy it. Tokyo has been one of the places she wanted to visit, and she enjoys her stay there. She wanders around town for so long that she forgets to head to school and gets lost on the way. Later, during her break, she catches up with Taki's friends, Tsukasa and Shinta, hoping to make sense of the things happening to her. She gets confused many times with her pronouns while talking. Classic Gen Z issues right there. They then go to a cafe and spend their time until evening. Mitsuha, who had always dreamed of a more interesting life, enjoys her day in Taki's body. She roams the streets, clicks pictures of her food, and even helps Taki's senior at work, Miki, with her dress. That last one really doesn't do any justice to Taki's character. Before going to bed, Mitsuha leaves a message on Taki's phone and writes down her name on his palm, almost as if she knew that they would switch back the next day. The next day, like Mitsuha predicted, Taki is back in his own body. His friends find him lacking his previous cuteness, and all his co-workers, who apparently had a crush on Miki, are all angry at him for spending time with her yesterday. Taki, who is super confused at this point, only has one explanation, a message on his phone saying, "Thanks to my girl power." Both of them now realize that during their dream, they switch bodies. A few more days pass and they begin to make sense of all that's happening. A few times every week, they switch bodies when they sleep, randomly. When they return back to their own bodies, they have no memory of what happened yesterday, so the pair start laying ground rules and leaving notes of do's and don'ts on each other's cell phone for when they have switched bodies. Taki's list contains things like don't waste money, while Mitsuha's list contains, you guessed it, don't look. It really doesn't make sense for her to be stuck on that. Like, Taki could have framed her for grand larceny if he wanted, but what Mitsuha's most concerned about is that he doesn't look. Then, the day of the arrival of the comet is near, and Mitsuha's grandma decides to take her sister to the family deity Mitsuba's shrine. Taki, who is now in Mitsuha's body, makes the journey with Yotsuha and her grandmother to the beautiful shrine at the center of a great crater. When they reach there, Grandma asks Mitsuha to offer her Kuchikami sake. Offering this to Musubi means to offer half of yourself. Taki makes the offering on her behalf. It's almost twilight when they return, and Taki jolts up from his sleep suddenly, tears in his eyes. Taki takes a look at his phone, and he realizes that Mitsuha has fixed him up for a date with Miki. Flustered and hurried, he races to meet Miki. Back at Itomori, Mitsuha feels the need to go to Taki's date. She has started developing feelings for Taki, which is why Mitsuha wishes to meet Taki for real. She tells her sister that she's leaving for Tokyo and skips school that day. She scours Tokyo for Taki and finally meets him on a train. Hoping to get together for a chat, she goes to him, but Taki has no idea who she is. Seeing Taki ignoring her very presence, Mitsuha feels wronged and sad and excuses herself to leave. Taki asks for her name, but she is already on her way out. She screams her name to Taki and barely hands him her braided cord as she is pushed out of the train by a swarm of exiting people. On his date, Taki spends his time nervously around Miki, and by the end of the date, he's glad for it to be over. Even Miki realizes that Taki, while having had a crush on her earlier, doesn't seem to like her anymore. After the date, Taki takes a look at the notes Mitsuha had left. He is confused at her mentioning of the comet that appears on that night, because the sky above him was clear. Taki decides that he should tell Mitsuha about everything the next time they swap bodies. However, somehow, they never switch places again. Days pass, and even after realizing that it might not happen at all, Taki starts to research where Mitsuha lives. He starts searching for the place in maps, in his drawing, and even on the internet. Until one day, he decides that he will go find it. He heads to the train station. When he reaches there, he's surprised to find Tsukasa and Miki waiting to go with him. They're just worried that he's getting catfished and want to be there for him. The three of them then head towards their unknown destination. Since they don't have much info about the place, Taki is forced to use his drawings to ask for directions and get little idea in response. After getting no progress with all the day's work, the trio decides to have lunch at a local restaurant nearby when the waitress recognizes his drawings as Itomori. As soon as they hear the name, Miki and Tsukasa realize that it's the same village where the comet Tiamat had struck. They rushed to where the village was to find that it was completely decimated and nothing but a lake remained. 3 years ago, when Comet Tiamat was closest to Earth, it had split, causing one half of it to land into Itomori, killing several hundred people. Suddenly, the realization hits him. It was true that Itomori, along with its residents, had been destroyed by the Astray meteor. The friends head to the library to gather details and find that over 500 people who gathered at the festival had died because of the meteor. They check the names of the dead people and find Tessie Seichin and Mitsuha's names mentioned. Taki is saddened and confused even more. Just a few weeks ago he had known her. However, he doesn't lose hope and continues reading books on Itomori. When Miki checks the book, she finds that braided cords, like the one on Taki's hands, were a specialty of Itomori. She asks how he got it, but Taki has no idea about it. He only knows that he's been wearing it for over 3 years now as a lucky charm. He suddenly remembers that someone had told him about the power of the cords that can unravel time itself, and remembers the day he went to the Mitsubi shrine with Mitsuha's granny, so he decides to go there. The next morning, on a rainy day, he heads to the shrine. He believes that with the Kuchikami sake, he can travel back in time from before the comet struck. I know it sounds crazy, but the guy had been switching bodies with a girl for the past month. Nothing would be a crazy idea for him at this point. Taki carefully takes Mitsuha's Kuchikami sake and drinks it, pouring half of Mitsuha's soul into his. Her memories from childhood start flowing into him. Everything up to the point she had died is now a part of Taki. The world suddenly stops and Taki blacks out. When he opens his eyes again, he's Mitsuha once again. She hasn't passed away yet. Taki can't stop himself from crying at this. In the news, he finds that the comet would be striking today. Granny then sits him down and tells him that she knows he's not Mitsuha. She tells him that it's been a thing that happened with herself and Mitsuha's mother as well. She has long forgotten whose life she was in, and so she wants him to cherish it while it lasts. Taki then rushes to Mitsuha's school, determined to save everyone in Itomori before the comet strikes. He somehow talks her friends, Seochin and Tessie, into helping her out. They plan to use the emergency speakers to evacuate the people out of town to the high school, which is outside the danger zone. Tessie will be placing explosives in the power plant on the outskirts of the village to make sure the threat seems real, and Mitsuha will try to persuade her father, who is now the mayor, to help them out. Taki goes to Mitsuha's father's office, and he's called stupid for making such assumptions. This makes Taki angry, who almost hits the man. Controlling himself, Taki leaves to persuade the people in town, but not even Yotsuha agrees with his intentions. He realizes that only Mitsuha can convince them, so he rushes to the Musubi Shrine on Tessie's bike, asking them to go ahead with the plan. On top of the Musubi Shrine's crater, when the sun had just hit the end of the earth, when it was neither night nor day, Taki and Mitsuha reunite once again. They return to their respective bodies, and Taki tells her that she had met him before. The two of them were on a 3-year delay. Then, he gives her the braid cord back, and they promise to meet again after all of this. For just in case they forget everything again, they decide to write each other's names in their hands. Taki does it first, but just as Mitsuha tries writing her name in Taki's hands, the twilight ends, and they're separated once again. The comet comes near and Mitsuha rushes back. She chants Taki's name all the way, promising herself that she won't forget his name. She meets up with Tessie, who had planted the bomb. They go ahead with the plan and the power plant explodes. Seochin makes a fake announcement in the emergency speakers asking people to evacuate the high school as there is a fear for further explosions. There is just one problem. Mitsuha cannot remember his name. What was his name? She's troubled by it, but there's no time, as the city council announces that the previous announcement was fake and everyone should stay where they are. Mitsuha rushes to her father's office, her mind still wanting to remember that name. She rushes and runs so fast that she stumbles and hurts herself pretty badly. Just then, she notices that there's something written on her palm. However, instead of a name, she finds "I love you" written on her hand. She laughs and cries with joy. While she couldn't possibly remember him with that, she's glad that he feels the same way as her. This fills her with determination, and she rushes once again to reach her father's office. Her sister and grandmother are already there. At the city festival, Tessie is frustrated that their plan didn't work, when he suddenly realizes that the meteor had split, just like Mitsuha said it would. The sky turns beautiful and red, exaggerated by the fact that the town's electricity had shut down. Soon enough, the meteor strikes. Buildings and bridges are destroyed, along with half of the town. The next day, Taki wakes up on the Musubi Shrine crater with no memory of what had happened. He has no idea of what he's doing there. He watches over the large lake in confusion. Several years have now passed, and Taki always has a feeling that he's missing something, someone, but he doesn't know who or what. Ever since that day, the day the stars fell. One day he meets Miki again, and they reminisce about that one time Taki had dragged them to the Musubi Mountains of Itomori. He had no reason to be so obsessed with the place and tells himself that it was probably because of the miracle that had happened in Itomori. Years ago, when the comet had hit the town, miraculously all the citizens were safe and unhurt, because the mayor had asked for an emergency evacuation drill at the very last moment. Later that day, as he was on his way to another interview, he sees her on a train, heading in the opposite direction. The face that he had not seen in a long while. Someone he knew, but couldn't quite remember. Their eyes meet, and they know instantly that they should meet. They get off their respective trains as soon as it stops, and rush toward each other. Strangers, and yet with such a connection. They look at each other for a long while, each wanting the other to speak, and finally they do so at once and ask, "Your name?"